Well, here we are again. For the 85th time this year, the crypto bull market has come to an end according to social media. Now, people are looking at the charts right now. They're looking at Bitcoin. It dropped below 100k. They're looking at different political events going on around the world and they're freaking out. So today, we're going to just look at things from an unemotional, unbiased perspective and really just zoom out and look at the bigger picture. And, there are a few things in this video that I'll be talking about that I think are very, very important to keep in mind right now. Let's start with a trip down memory lane. Now, some of you may remember this video from around 1 year ago. And I'm on my YouTube profile here, and you'll see this video. Is the bull market over? Must watch. That was 11 months ago. The actual date was the 7th of July last year, when things were also not looking too great after a pretty decent run. Now, the interesting thing about this video was I was talking about how the bull market was not over, and what we should expect is a lot of dips along the way, a lot of shakeouts, a lot of manipulation, and that kind of stuff, especially with institutions getting involved in the space. They're not going to make it easy for retail. So this is the Bitcoin chart on the 3-day time frame, and this arrow here marks out when the video was recorded. So we topped out around kind of March time at 73k, and then we dipped over the next few months, a small downtrend going on here to around 53k. So 20k of Bitcoin's value wiped out in the course of a few months. So people, of course, were naturally freaking out. And since then, over the next few months, and that wasn't even the bottom, but eventually we did get going, next leg up, and of course that led us to run to around 108, 109k. It was basically a 2x from the time of the video. If we look here, you'll see on that run up 102%. So for Bitcoin to run 2x in that time shows that the bull market definitely at that point was not over. So what are we seeing right now? Are there any similarities going on? Well, there are in terms of sentiment. Everything feels very doom and gloom like it did 1 year ago. And that is to be expected. The average retail investor is definitely over emotional. They are very, overreactive to what goes on and to price. And what we're seeing here is a very similar kind of setup. So we can see that price kind of topped out and dropped off. We can see here that it's kind of dropped off more recently, but if we zoom out a little bit, we go back to these previous highs. We kind of deviated just above them, and then we've seen a pretty substantial drop off. So I'll just mark this out here like that. So we see some deviation and then, a pretty decent downfall there. Even though it's not the same kind of time frame, we've seen similar here where we had this local top, we've deviated above, and now we've dropped off again. So are we going to see something similar? Are we going to see the same kind of playbook, run it back, before that next leg up? So maybe, we chop around here for the summer just like we did a year ago, and then eventually, we do finally make a break for it in end of Q3, maybe Q4, and then start that next and potentially the final leg for Bitcoin of this bull market, especially if 4-year cycles are to continue. So I actually look at this and think I'm not too worried. We're just below all-time high. With everything going on right now, there's actually more reason for us to be selling off right now this year than there was last year. This time around, we have Trump just going on an absolute mad one. It starts off with the meme coin, the Trump meme coin, sucking the liquidity out of the market and making a local top signal. You've also got tariffs, China beef, Elon beef, World War III, and there is so much going on right now to cause volatility, mostly in a downward direction in the market. Whereas last year there wasn't too much going on. There was a lot of speculation around the election that was coming up, but there was no crazy events, crazy volatility, not to this degree anyway. So that's why I believe this time around, there is a little bit more reason for this kind of sell-off, but nothing lasts forever. And I do believe that news moves quickly, the crypto market moves quickly, and this will all be just a distant memory in the near future. Now, of course, what is going on, especially with Israel and Iran, is terrible. Nobody wants to see that kind of stuff going on, but a lot of the time the market will overreact to such events, and it happened with COVID as well. We've seen, obviously, black swan event, crazy sell-off, and then, following on from that, the market continued to rally. So I think when people typically expect even more downside and things to get terribly, terribly worse, they often don't. They're often priced in, and that is what I expect to see again in the near future. This to me is just an unemotional way of looking at things. Things are not great, and it is completely understandable to why retail investors specifically are not throwing bids into the crypto market right now. They see everything going on, they see Trump going crazy, they see volatility. Why would they buy now? Retail typically want to see an uptrend, they want big green candles so they can FOMO into them. That is their emotional reaction to what is going on in the market. So it really doesn't worry me right now to what is going on. I actually think that the events that we are seeing could be basically speeding up what was going to happen anyway. We was going to see some crazy stuff go on. We was going to see a summer potentially of chop and downside, because typically speaking, the summer has never been nice to the crypto markets. Even during the bull markets, things typically slow down as people go on vacation, as people, take some time out, go on summer holidays with their kids, whatever it may be. And we've seen that year after year after year. So if this was to just speed up the process and get us back on track quicker, then I'm all for it. I think if you're spending too much time on social media right now, of course, depending on who you follow, you are going to see that the timeline was especially in shambles when Bitcoin dropped below 100k over the weekend, when in reality, it really wasn't that big of a deal. Now, last week, I shared this post on X and on Telegram. So if you're not following me there, the links will be down below in the description. But basically, I was looking at Bitcoin kind of in between levels, not really doing much, and pretty much just boring people at this point. And my thoughts here, specifically at the bottom, was one scenario I'm looking out for is a sweep of 100k before moving higher. I think bears would come out in full force below a psychological level like 100k, only for them to get wrecked later. If we fall below 93k, that's a different story because we lose decent market structure. But this here is exactly what we've seen. We dropped below 100k, bears went crazy, bull market's over, we're going to drop to 90, 80, 70k. And then what actually happened? Well, the follow-up tweet here is basically a wick straight into the level, quickly reclaimed, big daily candle following up. And, my only comment there was welcome home, BTC. So it really is just about keeping emotions in check. You don't want to turn bearish after such a dramatic move. And that is basically what we've seen across the timeline. Now, the way I see things is if you are a trader, solely a trader, you should be focusing on moves not just to the upside, but to the downside as well. You should be comfortable shorting and longing, and you should remain unemotional, unbiased, and just trade the direction. If there is no clear direction, you sit out and you don't trade. Typically speaking, that is the way I trade myself. You don't want to be a permabull when you are a trader. However, if you are an investor, this is a different story because, of course, you want your bags to go up. But you have to understand that short-term price action, short-term world events are something that you shouldn't be paying too much attention to, because if you are just constantly looking at headlines and short-term price action, you're going to drive yourself insane. You have to look at the bigger picture, zoom out, be patient, all that kind of stuff that we talk about time and time again on the channel. Now, in terms of what I am, I'm pretty much both. I do a bit of both, and it can be difficult to obviously switch hats, but I've been doing this for a long time now, and I understand the game that I'm fully involved with. And for me right now, I'm just keeping my cool, being patient from both sides. I'm not forcing trades. If there's an obvious trade for me to take, I'll take it, and I'll have my stop loss, and if I lose, I lose. Small loss, move on to the next one. But from my long-term investment perspective, I'll hold my spot bags. It doesn't matter if it falls 10, 20%. I understand that crypto is volatile, and I will just wait and wait until the bull market truly returns, because I do believe that it will once a lot of this drama and the summer is over. But for the meantime, I'll probably just enjoy the summer. You know, I've got a newborn son as well. I'm just going to enjoy spending time with the family, and I'll come back recharged when the time is right. If it's after summer, great. If it's before then, you know, I'll be ready. So that's kind of how I see things right now. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up the video. Just thought I'd share my thoughts on the recent developments and what is going on in the crypto market. Hopefully it's helpful for those who are maybe, you know, freaking out a little bit, getting a little bit nervous about what's going on. And it's just about zooming out, looking at the bigger picture, and realizing that short-term events, negative events will happen, especially when somebody like Trump is in charge. It is part and parcel of the game. We just have to ride the wave, and we will get rewarded in the long term. Please do drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you in the next one.